everybody, and welcome to the Kelly Green Hour. As we are getting set for week 15 or 16, in the NFL, as the Philadelphia Eagles look to clinch the NFC East for the second year in a row with a victory over the Washington Commanders tomorrow night. I'm your host, LG Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's going on?
Well, I'm ready for some football. I know you just got power back. I have lots of wind going on outside. So if you lose us, you know why. We got some strong winds going. So we just want to get a quick preview episode in between the potential power outages.
Yeah, my power was out for a little over an hour, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it stays on. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LGHarrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. And if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your prediction, players to watch, keys to the game as the Eagles, like I mentioned, can be the first team in 21 years, which was, ironically, the Philadelphia Eagles, to win the NFC East in back-to-back years. They can do it with a victory over Washington tomorrow, and if they happen to stumble, and the Chargers beat Dallas on Sunday, that would also clinch the East for the Eagles this week. They are pretty much entrenched into the number 3 seed in the NFC, Connor. With that, I didn't watch the game yesterday, but apparently this probably the best Thursday night game that there probably has been since the NFL went to Thursday night games.
The NFL probably didn't expect it to be 11-3 teams vying for the number 1 seed, because they would never plan a Thursday night game that way. So,
well, I don't know. Maybe they do want Thursday. They're trying to make Thursday night football a thing, so they were probably very happy that it went down the way it went, as the Seahawks were able to come back from 16 down in the fourth quarter to defeat the LA Rams. And Seattle's the number 1 seed right now. The Rams are the 5th seed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the 5 seed. And interesting to point out, that's the second, 2-3 score blown lead that the Rams have had this year. The first coming against the Eagles.
Yeah, and it's great, and it just shows you how things can quickly change in the NFC. A couple of weeks ago, the Bears were, I think, the top seed, and then they dropped all the way to 7 with a loss. And now LA was the top seed. They dropped to 5 with a loss. So things can change quickly in the playoff race as we are getting down to the final couple of weeks of the season. The Eagles have 3 games left, 2 against Washington, 1 against Buffalo. This is a rematch of the NFC Championship game last year, and a lot of people wanted this to be the Thursday night opener. This game should have been earlier in the season, where we can have Jalen Hurts versus Jaden Daniels. Daniels is out the remainder of the year. Zach Ertz is out the remainder of the year. Washington is all types of beat up. Laramie Tunsil's out for this game. So this isn't the same Washington team that the Eagles saw last year, in all 3 matchups, if we want to be honest. So what are your initial thoughts, Connor, on this Washington team?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, this Commanders team is a shell of itself. And I mean, this definitely doesn't go to, I know that there's probably going to be people who say, well, this is what you get when you have the oldest team in football. But in all reality, a lot of the people who are really, really banged up are not actually the oldest players on this roster. I mean, you play a risky game when you go and sign all these vets and try to take advantage of Jaden Daniels' rookie contract. But obviously, Jaden Daniels suffered a couple pretty rough injuries. Smart decision to shut him down. I mean, I can't believe it took that long to shut him down. I think as soon as the injury would have happened coming out of that game, there's no way he was stepping foot on that field. I mean, we see Patrick Mahomes, he may not be ready for week 1 next year. So you don't want to risk something like that where Jane Daniels goes out there and, heaven forbid, tears his ACL or Achilles, or does something that puts the Commanders out of contention next year too, because they have a potential bright future there with Jaden Daniels, and you don't want to mess that up, especially with a quarterback like that, with that type of talent. But the Commanders are really middle of the road. Their offense ranks 18th in yards. Their defense ranks 31st in yards across the board. I mean, the only thing they're really good at is their rushing attack has been surprisingly pretty good, but I feel like a lot of that is more on Jaden Daniels and prior to the injury. I mean, I guess like within some of the national media scope, the big thing is this is a game where they must dominate. And I mean, to be completely honest, we dominated the Raiders because we must have had to dominate that game. And the whole conversation was, well, it's just the Raiders. So you don't even have to dominate at this point. Win the game, win the division, and control your own fate of what players you want to play, what players you don't want to play the rest of the way, and how you want to manage it. Put some more power back into your hands, and that's all I want to see. I just want to see a continued progression of the offense. I don't want to return back to what we were, and I think that's the biggest thing that I want to see. Can the offense that we saw against the Raiders come out and do the same or very similar against the Commanders, who are a better defense, but not that much better, because we played the 32nd ranked defense, I think, and now we're playing the 31st ranked defense. So it's not exponentially better, and we should be able to run a similar offense and continue to throw more layers into that offense that we saw this past week against the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't care about style points. I just want to win. Those people that are saying, oh, they need to dominate, they don't know anything about playing football or playing organized sports. No, you need to just win the game. It's a division opponent. Division games are never easy. It doesn't matter record. So just come away with a win, get the division, clinch the division, and then, figure out the last 2 weeks of the season. And like you mentioned, get people healthy, maybe not even have to bring Lane Johnson back or Jalen Carter back until the playoffs. Give Jalen maybe a week, the last game of the regular season, maybe give him some time off, let Tanner McKee play. Same with Saquon, AJ Brown, Devontae, Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens. Like, we have a lot of guys that are banged up, played, obviously most of the team, played deep into last season, because we played the very last game of the year. And you don't get much time. So when you can manufacture your own bye week like they did last year, that last game of the year, the Eagles didn't play, and they were able to use that as their bye week, since they weren't the number one seed. Everybody doesn't remember that. Just because they hosted the NFC Championship game doesn't mean they were the one seed. Washington was able to defeat Detroit, who was the one seed, and that gave the Eagles home field advantage in the NFC Championship game. So, just find a way to clinch the division, and then you can figure it out from there. You don't want to play these games. If you remember, was it 2 years ago, AJ Brown played in a meaningless Week 18 game, got hurt, and wasn't available in the playoffs. AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith, or actually Devontae was available, but AJ Brown wasn't available for that Tampa playoff game. We don't want that. Just find a way to win, and then you're probably not going to go lower than the 3 seed. Because whoever wins the South is going to be the 4th. There's a slim chance you can get the 2, but why play games? Just handle your business. You can maybe play your starters in the first half of the Buffalo game, and then start pulling guys. Just give them a game and a half of rest. So we'll see what happens. But this Washington is looking. They remember what happened in the NFC Championship game, and while this isn't the same team, not the same quarterback. A lot of guys on defense are banged up, like McLaurin's not McLaurin, excuse me. Lattimore's out. They have a couple of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. They still want to play spoiler. They know they have the Eagles twice, and if they're able to find a way to win both games, and maybe they keep the Eagles from winning the NFC East. So they know that with it being a division game, they're going to do what is necessary. They haven't quit. Now they beat the Giants last week. It appears they haven't quit on Dan Quinn. I don't know if you had a chance to watch Hard Knocks yet, but they still seem to be kind of upbeat. They still have talent on that offense if you think about it. They have Terry McLaurin, they have Deebo Samuel, McCroskey. What the heck is his name? The running back. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. He's been making some plays for them. I don't think their defensive line is their offensive line is okay. But the way that the Eagles' defensive line has been playing the last couple of weeks, that should be a battle that they should, in theory, win. But obviously, the game's not played on paper. You have to go out there and battle and make the plays. And if the Eagles are able to do that, I don't foresee a way that Washington should, in theory, be able to beat the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what a divisional opponent's situation is, like you said, a lot of these divisional teams will give it their all in divisional games just because, the bitter feud, the rivalry that exists, especially in the NFC East, which has been obviously one of the most competitive and hotly contested divisions for, I mean, you could argue almost 3 decades. I know that it's been over 2 decades since there was a repeat champion, and that could happen this year. But I mean, you can go back beyond that and how competitive this division constantly has been. Even when we were going through those bumps in the road as the NFC least, it was still a division you wanted to see the games because it's such a passionate division, such a heated rivalry that exists between all 4 of these teams. So I agree with you. I don't think we see, this defense go and shut out the Commanders. The Commanders have shown an ability to put points up on the board, even in this situation. I mean, when you look at like against the Denver Broncos, which they didn't have Jaden Daniels in, they put up 26 points, losing 27-26. And then, of course, the Minnesota Vikings game, they got shut out there a couple weeks ago. But that was also the game that Jaden Daniels went down and everything was thrown for a whirl. But, I mean, they're a team that, even with Marcus Mariota on the field, has been able to put up some sort of points. Not great. Like, you look, there's 22-7, 14, 22-13. 26. So, I mean, they're probably going to be able to put up a couple scores, make a little bit happen, maybe make us sweat a little bit. But I think that, you never doubt divisional opponents, and especially a divisional opponent who has a lot of veterans. You say that they're not really giving up on Dan Quinn. That's because a lot of these guys are vets. These guys, it's not in their DNA to give up on a coach, especially such a highly respected coach like Dan Quinn. So I have a ton of respect for those vets and going out there and still giving it their all in games that obviously don't matter for them, but obviously, you want to play your best and look ahead to next year and see what you are able to bring to the table next year. Some of them are playing for contracts next year, like a tryout for their next team, or, a contract to return to the Washington Commanders and see what happens with, hopefully a 100% fully healthy Jaden Daniels next season. But I agree. I mean, down your starting left tackle, we know what it feels like to be down your starting right tackle, one of your best offensive linemen. So being down Laramie Tunzel automatically makes our offensive line significantly worse, even though they haven't been great. It's also a lot more challenging when you're playing with a backup quarterback in the situation that you're put in, even with one of the experience of Marcus Mariota. It makes things a little more challenging. So I'm definitely not going to completely throw shade at the Commanders and say, this is a game you have to blow them out. You're going to blow them out. I'm not going to go that way from a prediction standpoint, and I'm not going to go that way from just a thought process towards the Washington Commanders, because we've seen crazier things happen with far inferior divisional opponents in other divisions playing spoiler for the top teams in the division.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm intrigued by this matchup. If we're looking at the Washington offense against the Eagles defense, Quinyon Mitchell and Terry McLaurin, that's always a good battle. Deebo Samuel against probably Cooper DeJean, that'll be fun. Jordan Davis against Tyler Biotish, the center for Washington. Jordan Davis has been really good, and there was talk like I saw a quote that he's like, he was told you don't need a C to be a leader. And he's like a guy. He's the upbeat, the quote unquote, and I mean this in a better way than Garrett Stubbs with the Phillies. He's the vibes guy. Like he's somebody that always has people laughing, but he's also very productive on the field, having the best year of his career. And having somebody like that who's also productive, like really helps. When you're missing potentially your best defensive player in Jalen Carter. The matchup of whoever's going to start at left tackle for Washington, which is probably going to be Brandon Coleman, going up against whether it's Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, that'll be a battle that hopefully the Eagles are able to win. And then Jalen Phillips going up against the rookie Josh Connerly. Connerly hasn't been that great this year. Obviously being a rookie, and even though he was a first rounder, I mean Jalen Phillips has really stepped up. Since coming over to the Eagles. There have been a couple of games, maybe a game or two where he didn't do much, but like he's really been productive for the Eagles over the last couple of games, and especially that last game, tipping passes. So like just looking at the battles across, or the matchups across the field, and then obviously I can't wait for Nakobe Dean to blitz. I every week I just look forward to Nakobe Dean blitzing and running through a running back to get to the quarterback. And Mariota hasn't been that bad for Washington, in this season, getting the start for Jaden Daniels. We know he's experienced. We know he can still move around in the pocket, has legs. So it'll be an intriguing battle if they're going to use Dean or ball in the spy Mariota. But again, the way that this Eagles defense has been playing now, obviously last year they were number one in the NFL, and they're not number one this year, but with the tougher schedule, the way they've been playing, like they have been really good. And, the guy that's really has been a positive and somebody we didn't think would be starting at this point in the season, Adoree Jackson. Like he has been outstanding for the Eagles. He looks way more comfortable in the system. And I mean, remember in the preseason, like the way Vic Fangio was talking, we didn't think he was going to even make the team or even potentially like be a starter. It's like they wanted to give that starting spot to Keely Ringo, and then they traded for Jacorian Bennett, so maybe they wanted to give the starting spot to Bennett, and neither of them would take it. And Adoree Jackson, just being the savvy vet that he is, and just doing his job, when his number's called upon, going out there and making plays, and he deserves a lot of credit for not, when the fan base and media and everybody was kind of being like, dude, you don't have it anymore. He didn't let that affect him. And he's done a great job for this Eagles defense. And I'm not saying that he's going to be here next year, but he's like the James Bradbury almost. The year he was the all pro. Now Adoree Jackson's not going to be an all pro, but he playing second fiddle, being that second cornerback on the outside to Quinyon Mitchell, like, it's a role that he has done an outstanding job with.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I can see a world where, in a very expensive cornerback market and with a team that has so many other needs like the Philadelphia Eagles that they're going to have to address through the draft and through free agency, I can see based on, what went down in the last offseason and letting Isaiah Rodgers go, that maybe they do bring Adoree Jackson back on a 2 or 3 year contract, fully guaranteed just that first year, and see where things go. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised. Howie, he's a guy who sometimes overreacts to what he presumes is a miss in a prior offseason or a miss in something that he did. And maybe he might see that in a comparison between Isaiah Rodgers and Adoree Jackson and what they lost in Isaiah Rodgers last offseason and what they didn't think they'd get back in Adoree Jackson. I think it's been week 1, he was responsible for 69 yards receiving, or week 2. Like it's since that one game where he gave up that peak number, it was week 1 or week 2, he hasn't been responsible for more than 69 yards. Of course, we know in games he's been there on missed tackle situations, but busted coverage situations where he probably could have been accounted for as the one responsible for giving up the yardage, but he wasn't the nearest defender, so it went to somebody else. But I mean, he's definitely come a long way since the bye week. This defense has come a massive way since the bye week, and Nakobe Dean coming back and Nolan Smith coming back. It was massive that this defense get healthy, and this is all being done now without Jalen Carter in the lineup, which is really impressive in its own right. But I agree with you. It'll be interesting to watch the matchups between the DBs. And like you said, this Washington Commanders offense, they're playing from behind a lot, so they pump out quite a few yards. I was just looking. They've been up over 290 yards in almost every single game that Marcus Mariota has been their their quarterback, and they've averaged. I'm just looking now. They've been up over 135 yards rushing in all but 2 or 3 of the games where Marcus Mariota has been the quarterback. And Marcus Mariota only has accounted for an average of 30 yards per game of that. So obviously he brings an element that allows them to create a sort of rushing attack. And while the Philadelphia Eagles defense has gotten a lot better against the run, we have seen that Eagles defense kind of falter against the run in certain games and give up quite a bit of yardage on the ground. So hopefully, they're able to keep that, at bay again this week against a team that's probably going to want to try to establish a bit of a run so that Mariota can open up a bit of a passing game. But it's definitely no offense to totally disrespect, and obviously playing from behind. Would this be an offense that, if forced to, would have to pump out 300 to 400 yards of offense? Probably not, but they're constantly forced into that situation. And I would tend to believe the Eagles offense is hopefully going to put them in a similar situation that's going to force them to have to try and get some yards and put some points on the board this week. So, but it'll be an interesting matchup. I agree with you. I can't wait to see Dean bringing the heat. Nolan Smith, I think, is the second since the bye week, since week 10. He has the second highest pressure rate in the NFL, behind only, I think it was TJ Watt or Micah Parsons, one or the other. So obviously he's been a huge, I think he only has 2 sacks since he came back, but he's obviously been a massive help for this defense. Obviously it doesn't always have to, we want to see, 15, 20 sacks. Sure, of course, we'd love to have him do that. By having a pressure rate of 24%, so on nearly a quarter of his pass rushes, he's getting some sort of pressure or making life hard on a quarterback. That's been huge and instrumental for this defense. And then Nakobe Dean goes without saying. Anybody in his way that isn't an offensive lineman is not going to stop him. And he's usually left to test a tight end or a running back, and he just runs them over.
Switching over to the Commanders defense, this is where they are old, needless to say. Bobby Wagner, Von Miller, Preston Smith's kind of old, Javon Kinlaw. They have a lot. They have a lot of what we would like to call experience on that side of the football. Still some decent play. Like Deron Payne is still good. They don't, as I mentioned, Marshawn Lattimore is out in the IR, so we won't get to see the AJ Brown versus Lattimore battle. They always like to battle with each other. I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Washington. Hopefully it's not as windy as it's been in Philly the last couple of weeks when the Eagles have played at home. But while we want it, we know that Washington's running or rush defense isn't that good. So, and the Eagles ran the ball about 47 times last week. So they're probably their game plan is going to probably want to be as similar to last week. But if they're going to go under center a lot, we probably see more than, I think they did 30 under center plays and they only passed out of it maybe 5 times, something like that last week. Probably see a little bit more variety. Obviously get Devontae and AJ involved. Dallas Goedert always seems to be involved. They seem to be most creative in the red zone with Goddard. I'd like to see some creativity with the receivers. Obviously get Saquon and Tank Bigsby involved. I think this, and Fred Johnson's going to play. Lane Johnson's out. Again, this is his 5th game, and I know you mentioned it because I mentioned I'm surprised that they didn't put him on IR, but they had feeling or hope, they were hopeful that he would be able to come back. But it's kind of surprising, like, that they didn't put him on IR just to let him get the full 4 weeks so he's not rushing back. They did show a clip in Hard Knocks. He was at his barn working out, and he looked fine with like moving on his feet, moving a bunch of weight. Because he's just not playing. The availability to play isn't there just yet. And I'm at a point where if the Eagles do win tomorrow, just sit him out to the playoffs. If there's one guy that doesn't really need to play and who can be fine, who can come off pretty much roll off the couch and play and be at the Hall of Fame level that he is, it's Lane Johnson. So if the Eagles are able to do it, you sit him for a couple of weeks, keep him off that, Liz Frank injury, and just have them ready to roll in the wild card weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think if things were getting really, really tight with the Cowboys, like if the Cowboys hadn't lost in prior week, like to that Minnesota game, I am of the belief that they would have been prepared to have him return in a situation where they thought things were getting uncomfortable with regards to their position with the Dallas Cowboys and at the top of the NFC East. So I think it was just the potential to have him available is better than the option of IR and him, and who would you have put up in his place is what is my thoughts. I mean, because like you said, you can bring back a 50% of a Lane Johnson, and he's definitely going to be better than 100% of a Brett Toth or Fred Johnson. I don't know if I go that far. Fred Johnson's been really good, but he's pretty banged up now. He only was a limited participant today yesterday in practice, which was the very last moment that he could have been activated or could have been practiced and been available for the game on Saturday night. So I agree with you on that standpoint. I guess I see where they were coming from, but I don't necessarily believe there was any issue with letting him have the 4 weeks that he needed. I mean, I look back to the Landon Dickerson situation, and I think that the whole crux of his injury issues stemmed from not being 100% week one, and then things just started to pile on top of that. And you don't want to put Lane Johnson in a situation where that Liz Frank becomes something far worse, and him not be available at all at your disposal. So, but like, offensive linemen are tough SOBs, and they are guys that are the hardest guys to probably talk off of that football field and keep off of that football field. And you see it in Jurgens and Dickerson. They are definitely far from 100%, and they are definitely, I don't want to say, I feel like having the backups in would cost us more than having them in, but you can tell that they're a reason that the offensive line probably isn't as effective as we know that this offensive line can be. But otherwise, on that Russian standpoint, the Washington Commanders rank in the bottom 5 in rush attempts against, Russian yards against, yards per attempt against. So this has the feelings of more get right Saquon Barkley game. Get Jalen Hurts on the move. He ran, I think it was 7 times in the last game. Get him on the move around that same amount of time, depending on the score. If you get ahead, 3-4 scores, let's not get crazy like we did last week and have them doing quarterback draws or RPO type plays where you give him that option. Let's try not to make him available to run in those situations again. It was scary enough last week. But then when you look on the flip side, on the passing side of it, they rank in the bottom 3 in yards allowed through the air and in touchdowns allowed via the pass, and they rank in the bottom 10 for interceptions and forcing turnovers. So teams are scoring at a near 50% clip against this Washington Commanders defense. So this should be another game where the Eagles offense is able to continue to find their stride, put points on the board, get creative, test some other things out, and keep doing things that worked so well against the Vegas Raiders. I like you said, I would love to see a little bit more creativity, getting the wide receivers involved, and making sure that all aspects of your offensive game are working and going to be flowing well. If you do lock things up this week and you decide to rest some of your key players for the next 2 weeks, you want to make sure you go out on a high and a good feeling for this offense.
Yeah, definitely. And while I would like to see Jalen run, I'm of the like, we saw what happened his last run last week. And I don't want, they're not winning a Super Bowl without Jalen Hurts. So we obviously need him to be available. I'm of the input, like, I want him to run, but I want it to be as needed. I don't want, like, I'm not forcing runs, especially on that field too. Like, you see what happens to Alex Smith and RG3, and but like, I'm not going to force a run for Jalen Hurts. I'm going to, if it's there, if we call a QB draw, run it, get down. Like, he had the couple QB draws, which again are predictable. I like the way they line up in formations, how defenses don't know, oh, this is a QB draw. I'll never understand. 5 receivers, they're going to do a QB draw like 90% of the time. So that's my thing. Like, do it, but don't overdo it, because Frankie Louvu is a dirty player. We saw it last year. He is a dirty player. So if they can, get he got concussed in this game last year. Jalen did. So if they can concuss Jalen Hurts and get him out of the game and potentially, end this season, I wouldn't shock me if Washington did that. So I want Jalen to be smart about it, and Jalen is usually smart about it. But if I'm Patullo and Sirianni in this game, like I'm not going to be like, all right, I want you to run the ball 7 times regardless. No, run it as needed. Get down and but use Saquon, use Tank Bigsby, get the ball to Devontae, get the ball to AJ. We should be able to move the ball against this Washington team, and it's probably going to feel like a home game too. I mean, Washington's a couple hours. I almost got tickets to go to the game. Like, I was really looking into it. That stadium's a piece of trash. So I don't want to really go there. But Washington's obviously eliminated from the playoffs. Their fans don't care anymore. So it's going to be a large contingent of Eagles fans. So if the Eagles can take the ball like they did the first drive last week, go down the field in 12 plays, score a touchdown, get the Eagles fans into it, like Washington may give up, especially if they go 3 and out or are forced to punt their first drive. It could be an early, it could be a game to where Washington's just like, all right, let's just get out of here. Maybe we have another 2.5-hour game like we did last week.
Yeah, I mean, the Jalen Hurts averages 6.8 rush attempts a game, so I expect to be in that 5-6 range. But I agree with you. Don't put anybody at risk that doesn't have to be put at risk. Don't do any trickery that puts anyone in an obscure situation or in a risky situation. We should be able to put points up and continue the momentum this offense has started to build without doing anything crazy or putting anyone in any type of situation for injury. But I mean, I think I agree with you. I don't think there's any reason why they don't take the ball if they have the opportunity to and get on a really good first drive, put some points up early. If you can get the Washington Commanders in a spot where, they're starting to get deflated, then they'll pack it in and we can wrap up the division and look towards greener pastures, towards the playoffs, hopefully. And getting some of these guys healthy and off the field that probably need to get off the field. Like I said, and I still kind of stand by it. I do kind of want to see them out there against the Buffalo Bills to play a really genuinely competitive team. Just to make sure that the offense is clicking. And it could be just a drive at this point. If things are wrapped up, it could be just a drive. But just the prospect of getting out there. But I understand, obviously, the risk associated with putting them out there for any amount of time. What could happen. So, obviously, we know that they're going to make the right decision based on that and based on the outcome of these 2 games this weekend. It could be already decided Saturday. And if not, it could be decided on Sunday. Who knows? But this Washington Commanders defense hasn't been good. They're banged up, but definitely not as banged up as the offense for the Commanders. And they're still allowing mass yards through the air and on the ground. And this is a way to get all up facets of the offense clicking and headed in the right direction again.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Just looking forward to potentially it's a hat and t-shirt game, and that's what Washington has been preaching all week. You don't want them to clinch a division on our field, this week. Let's try to delay it, whether it's a day, another week. And I get your point with the whole Buffalo thing, but again, I'm not forcing, if we don't need to go out there, I'm not forcing guys to go out there. Obviously, if the Eagles win tomorrow and Chicago loses to Green Bay or whatever, then that puts the 2 seed in play for the Eagles. So, that would change things potentially. Whatever happens in the 8 o'clock in the game after the Eagles Washington game, what happens in Chicago, Green Bay. So we'll see what happens, but the Eagles have to take care of their business first. All right. So we have to go to our final segment, which is going to be players to watch, keys to the game, players to watch, unheralded player of the week, and then our prediction. Do you want to go first, Connor?
Sure, I'll start with the keys of the game and the players to watch. I'm gonna go and say Saquon Barkley for this game is the player to watch for all the stats that I alluded to, 10 minutes ago. This Russian defense is not good. It's one of the 5 worst in the league. This is one that you can take full advantage of that and continue to get Saquon Barkley rolling in the right direction after, up until pretty much the last couple weeks, Saquon Barkley was having genuinely a year to forget. So this is another game where he can continue to get right, see the field the way he needs to see it, and get going with a lot of momentum heading towards the playoffs and far more important games for this Eagles team. Keys to the game. Just continue to get the offense headed in the right direction. Don't fall into the ways before the Raiders game. And I understand that people are going to say, well, it's just the Raiders. Well, it's just 75% of a Washington Commanders team based on the injuries. This offense has looked so bad at times and so lethargic at times this season that any type of momentum, any type of putting up points and yards is important and key, and definitely has them getting in a better mindset and having Kevin Petullo look like more of a competent play caller at times. And things are getting more creative. Things seem to be headed in the right direction on the offensive side of the ball. So just continuing to keep that momentum rolling against a team that you can definitely put up similar. You can definitely, there's no reason you're not putting up 28 to 31 points against Washington Commanders this week either. Defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Nolan Smith. I'm pretty sure I went with Nolan Smith last week, but similar to the point that I alluded to, he's creating a pressure on almost a quarter of his snaps. That's huge. And this feels like a game, this feels like the big game. He's had 2 sacks since he came back from injury at the bye week. This feels like one of those games where he can get 2 or 3 sacks and have a really big game and really produce and have that pressure percentage turn into genuine production. For the defense, I mean, key to the game is just keep doing what you're doing. This is a defense where there's really nothing over the past couple of weeks, really since week 10, there hasn't been a whole lot to complain about with them. They've been put in some situations by the offense, in the game against the Cowboys and the Bears, where I don't feel that it was their fault that the points and the yardage started to get put up on them. It was a loss in the time of possession department and the offense just not being able to sustain drives and put points up. But now this feels like a game where the offense is going to sustain drives. You're going to be well rested. You're going to be able to go out there, make some plays, force some turnovers, and like you said, make this just another really quick 2.5-3 hour game and wrap the division up and move on. But there's really the key is just to keep doing what they're doing. Vic Fangio knows what he's doing. Uncle Vic is absolutely killing it this year again, and to no one's surprise that he is doing that again.
Nope, not at all. I don't know how much longer he has, but he's definitely done an outstanding job with this young Eagles defense. I think the Eagles have the youngest or second youngest defense in the NFL. And everybody thought that after losing 5 starters that they would be the weak link, but they're the strength of the team. On offense, I'm going to go AJ Brown. I know last week the offense does seem to move smoother when they're not quote unquote forcing the ball to AJ. But I think him getting involved helps the offense because it can open up for Devontae, it can open up for Dallas, it can open up for Saquon. So, and the secondary is not good for Washington. So I think AJ Brown, has potentially has another 100-yard day as he inches closer to that 1,000-yard mark. And offensively, just protect the football and limit the penalties. They only had 3 penalties last week. And I think that might have been a season low. So the Eagles can just continue not to have, whether it's a motion penalties or pre-snap penalties, holding penalties, whatever it is, just limit the penalties, limit the turn, and not have any turnovers, and you should be able to move the ball easily against Washington. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go Quinyon Mitchell, and I'm going Q. I mean, like, it's mind-boggling that he's not top 10 in Pro Bowl voting for cornerbacks. He's one of the best cornerbacks in football. He's top 5, definitely, maybe even top 3. Like Patrick Surtain, Derek Stingley, and him maybe. He's been outstanding. I don't think he's given up a touchdown yet. He's just, we don't hear his name, and that's a good thing. The Raiders.
I think that's why he's not part of the Pro Bowl voting too.
The Raiders didn't test him at all. There are teams that just don't test him. They go after Adoree. And then when you have Cooper DeJean, who's also really good, you saw what he did against Ladd McConkey against the Chargers. Like it helps when you have those two guys back there that can kind of. I mean, Quinion shuts down half the field. Cooper can shut down the middle of the field. It definitely makes living life, as a defensive coordinator, makes it a lot easier. My key on defense is going to be just get after Marcus Mariota and make tackles. Don't one thing Deebo Samuel's really good at. They'll get him the ball in space in the screen over the middle, and he makes a man miss and go tackle. Like keep a 5-yard gain to a 5-yard gain. Don't let a 5-yard gain become a 15-20-yard gain. So that's my key to the game for the Eagles defense. All right, your unheralded player of the week for week 15 last week in the NFL, Connor.
I'm revisiting an old friend of ours, and I'm going with Kenny Gainwell. I mean, to be honest, I probably should have picked him so much sooner earlier in the season when he had a good game or a couple good games back to back. And I was like, man, is this really Kenny? This isn't Kenny Gainwell. This is not the Kenny Gainwell that we saw last season. But he went out there and he pumped out 126 yards of total offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 80 yards on the ground, 46 through the air. He was 126 of 359 yards of Pittsburgh Steelers offense. He's been so good for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I know me and you, we're not big fans of him last year. We constantly, whenever he would come out there in that 2-minute drill or red zone drill, and we saw Kenny Gainwell marched out there and Saquon Barkley pulled off the field, our minds were always like, but why? Why are we doing this? And I mean, he's turned into an absolute weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who absolutely needed that victory. It was a huge victory for them on Monday night in the absolute freezing cold where the Dolphins and Tua clearly can't, maybe just Tua, but fails like the Dolphins altogether, but they just can't seem to figure it out. So, and it was a must win for the Steelers, and now they pretty much control their destiny over there in the AFC North. That has been a really shocking division due to injuries and other situations. So our old friend Kenny Gainwell is my unheralded player of the week.
I'm going with Brandon Graham. 2 sacks and 7 snaps. Over 25% of his usage on the field and in sacks. And who knew that it would take 16 years to realize that he's a pretty good defensive tackle. Stepping in at the defensive tackle position with Jalen Carter out. And he still has that energy that he's always had. So I'm gonna go with Brandon Graham. It is prediction time, Connor. I have mine written down. I am 8-6 on the year. You are 7-7. Who you got?
I got the Eagles winning this one. I think we're going to be able to put up the points. The defense is going to make more than enough requisite stops for this. But I do think that the Commanders are going to get some points right around the ballpark that they've been getting most of the year. Eagles 34, Commanders 13.
34 points. Wow. All right.
And maybe I'm just too bought into what I saw last week, but
I also have the Eagles winning 23-13.
Wow.
Again, I don't need to see special. I just need to see a win. I don't care how it gets done. Just want the Philadelphia Eagles to come away with the win, clinch the NFC East, and then they can get people healthy going into the playoffs. Thanks everybody for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRaw54, and follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. We will be back next week to get you to review this game. Excuse me. And then we're going into I can't believe Christmas is less than a week away. Time flies. And then we will also get you set after Christmas for the Eagles and the Buffalo Bills. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.